Welcome aboard Skylark Outdoors, and today we are going to be reviewing the SACS Strider 11 or the SACS Strider 11, which we've got right here. You can see this one is outfitted beautifully with two 300 horsepower Mercury engines. So as we step onto this boat, we're going to go through the tour and show you some of the features and then go over the specs on this. But this is actually the open back model with the outboard engines. There's also a sundeck model, and instead of a table there, you kind of get a larger sundeck area and cushion. Now, the Strider 11 has a head on here as well as sleeping quarters for two. That is what is down below underneath that window. Is you've got a berth for two. You've got the planking here, and then this is a rib or rigid inflatable boat hull. So you've got the rigid inflatable tube on the outside, and then a traditional fiberglass hull. Now, the advantage of that is that you're going to get a little bit drier of a ride, some more flotation, and then you're also going to cut down weight, which means you're going to have better performance because you've got less fiberglass, and then you have the additional flotation from the tube. And that tube is actually a 2.3 foot diameter tube, so it's very large. And you can see in the back here, we've got a little station with a sink and grill, and then underneath that, we do also have an ice box and refrigerator. The Helm station up here is beautiful and has kind of a racing inspired design. You've got your dual throttle controls as well as joystick control from Mercury on this one, and then your heads up or GPS display and all the features there as well as all the switches. So I like how you've got all the controls right here. It's very clean. It does have kind of a racy feel to it in this, and then that just adds to the vibe of this boat and the sportiness of it. You've got two very comfortable chairs up here as well as the seat is going to fold forward so you can stand up or sit. And then as we go down here, that is where you've got your head and then your berth for two people. And there is a little porthole and skylight up in the front as well. So you have everything you need if you wanted to stay overnight. Now, it's a little bit tight in here, but they do have that. The SACS Strider 11, I think, can serve a couple different versatile roles. My immediate thought is that this would be a tender on a larger yacht, but this is also a fairly lightweight, high power boat. You can put up to 800 horsepower on this, so you're going to have fun on this thing as well. And there you just saw the head. So you've got a head, you've got a berth for two, and then this could be just an entertaining day boat, as well as you could use it for overnight if you wanted. But I also think that this would be a good sport boat. So if you've got something larger and is a little bit more difficult to handle, you're not going to have that issue with this boat. And you've got plenty of seating in the back here for entertaining or taking people on a tour. So I think that's really nice. But in terms of overhead cover, you really just have the driver and passenger covered with that T-top or canopy there. So it doesn't have a lot of shelter from the elements, and that's one thing about this boat. You probably wouldn't want to spend an 8-hour day on it without some kind of significant sun shading, or make sure you're wearing sunscreen. And it's not really set up for fishing either. This is, in my opinion, a tender boat, a boat that you're going to move people on, or a day boat where you're going to entertain people, or a boat where you want to get somewhere fast, because this thing, I'm sure, rips with a total horsepower or horsepower max rating of 800 horsepower. And this one is actually fully maxed out with twin Mercury 400s. I might have said 300s before, but that's just because I'm voicing this video over after recording it a while ago. But this one does have the full Mercury V10 400 horsepower each, so you are going to get a lot of power out of this thing, and I'm sure that this thing rips. In terms of its width, you've got 12.43 feet wide. It's got the 2.3 foot tube diameter, a 14-person capacity, so plenty for a tender and or a sport boat. You've got the sundeck layout or the open back. This is the open back layout. And then you have a 2.79 foot draft, 140 gallon fuel capacity, 34-gallon water capacity and then an 11-gallon waste tank. It does sleep 2, and then you've got a 24.3 degree dead rise, and then the weight on this is 4.2 tons. You're gonna have to do some conversion there to get that into pounds, and that's because SACS, S-A-C-S, the Strider 11, is a European company, so they use the metric system rather than imperial units. However, in looking at this boat, I will say everything on it does feel very high quality. It's nice stepping on it, stepping off of it. It feels very stable. And with that power to weight ratio with the inner tube rather than additional fiberglass, this thing is going to give you a nice high and dry ride and a very fast ride. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't know about ribs, or a hybrid rib, which is what I would consider this versus a full rib like you would see in a dinghy, is that the ribs typically, or the inflatable part of this boat, will also serve as dampening to the boat and the ride itself, because it's absorbing some of that shock, or it's kind of like a built-in shock absorber. Another nice thing about this is that you can pull right up to a yacht or another boat, and you're not going to have to worry about scratching it or scraping it as much, because you've got this nice inflatable rib on the outside. So it would be great as like a club boat, where you're going to be taking people around to a lot of different places or helping them get on and off a dock. And the rear entry is very easy on this, as well as the tube does not feel overwhelming. As you can see, when you've got this next to the dock, it's kind of at a perfect level for this floating dock that we've got here. If you had a higher dock, you still would be okay, but I think that's something that you would want to watch out when you are parking this or loading or onboarding people on and off. You would want to get that height right so people aren't stepping too far down or too far up onto this. Now, overall, the things that I like about this boat are its race-inspired design with the steering wheel and the throttle controls, as well as your GPS unit, and the nice layout of all the switches. Things that I wish were maybe a little bit different: I wish you had more enclosure up in the front of this and the sides for when you are really ripping on this thing, because if it's a cooler day, you are definitely going to feel that if you are putting this out at full throttle. All you've got is kind of like that windscreen there, so you're going to want to make sure that you have gear there. And then it is nice that you have this little berthing area if you were transporting this, or maybe you just wanted to do an overnight somewhere where you get dinner, you have a couple drinks, and then you're just going to sleep in the boat at the dock and head home the next day, which you certainly could, because you've got a pretty good range on this with the 140-gallon fuel capacity, as well as combining that with its lightweight and hull shape and size for this boat. And then this, even though it is a head, you can see there's drains in there. You actually have that shower wand right there to the right as well, so you could take a shower in there. Everything that you need for that. You've got a nice sound system in this. You can see the speakers underneath, so definitely can have a lot of fun there. And then that steering wheel is adjustable as well for your comfort, and there's a little step there to put your feet on in front of that steering wheel, which is nice. Now, you can also push this down, remove the table, whatever you want to do there, or you can get some cushions that will infill, and so you could have more of a sundeck layout here if you wanted to get cushions that infilled the rear. But this is that open back layout versus the sundeck layout. They also do have a version of this with inboard engines. However, I would highly recommend going with the outboard, or for the SACS Strider 11 over the inboard. I think you're going to get a higher power to weight ratio. You're going to get better performance, easier maintenance, as well as if you're using this in saltwater, I would highly recommend going with outboards, because of the maintenance you're going to be able to do on those and make sure that you're flushing those all the time, versus the inboard engines and just wear and tear on them. I think that outboards typically, in most cases, are always going to be better suitable for salt water, as well as winterization. You're going to be able to winterize something like this easier. You can see you've got this rear platform, which is nice and easy to get on and off. They've got a little ladder there on the side, so you don't have any problems with that. You could definitely jump off the back of this. if you wanted and really enjoy it. Now, SACS has a couple different models. They've got the Strider 11, I think there's a Strider 9 and a 13, and then they also have the Rebel. So in terms of the Strider lineup, you've got the 11, 10, 13, 15, and 19, and the Strider 900, and then you have the SACS Rebel lineup, which is the Rebel 55, Rebel 50, Rebel 47, and Rebel 40. Pretty cool looking boats. Highly recommend you check this out. So it's sacsmarine.com, SACSmarine.com. Kind of cool, just different boats to take a look at, and I do like the design of these overall. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Give us that thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for watching.